brothers Wisp. The brothers Wisp, brothers Wisp. The brothers Wisp. The brothers.
You're now listening to Greg.
Hello, everybody. This is Tommy with the Brothers Wisp coming to you for episode number 165 here on July 16th, 2022. I'm going to be flying solo this week. Didn't quite get everyone's schedule figured out, so such is life, though. Greg did it a couple times, and if Greg can do it, I'm pretty certain I can figure it out, too. So, no new patrons, but I guess we ought to get our shout outs out of the way. The Brothers Wisp is brought to you by Sonar, a scalable, intuitive, and comprehensive ISP billing and operational support system. Learn more at Sonar.Software. We're also brought to you by Tower Coverage. Tower Coverage is your RF propagation system to empower your network. Real-time data metrics enable your coverage area, reaching your customer base, and more. The industry's best RF propagation mapping system allows website integration for customer sign-up and pre-qualification. Use this data to scientifically plan network expansion and help your WISP succeed. Get a free trial today at towercoverage.com. Quick little side note, I was chatting with Dennis, who's the owner of Tower Coverage, and we're going to be scheduling a time to see what they can do. We're going to talk about the new broadband data collection form and Form 477 and how all that's boiling out. There's been a lot of talk about that. And so we're going to have a special episode here very soon coming out next week, I'm hoping, where we talk about that and how that's going to affect us with US WISPs and how Tower Coverage can help you with that. So that'll be a special episode with them. And then also we just did a special episode with them. Preseam is an edge network QoE solution that enables proactive management of the network and subscriber experience to achieve higher customer satisfaction while lowering operational costs and increasing revenue. Preseam is made by Aterlo Networks, whose goal is to enable local and regional ISPs to thrive by solving network problems with products that people love. Launched in 2017, Preseam has helped more than 400 ISPs in the US and around the world deliver better internet to their subscribers. You can find out more about them at preseam.com. Great guys, love their software, love their stuff. And if you haven't listened to our episode with them, that has got to be one of my favorite episodes that I've ever been on, and was a lot of fun. So check them out. So seeing as I get to, I'm the only one here, it's going to be awesome because I get to run the whole show, and it's I don't have to, be accountable to anybody, which is pretty darn great. And covering the conversation, it's just me. I love listening to myself talk. So hope you guys do too. Not a lot of big new stuff coming out this week. FCC, I guess, is threatening to bump up their minimum broadband requirements. In the show notes, there's going to be a link to an Ars Technica article. The new chair, Rosenworcel, proposes 100 by 20, which is pretty common nowadays for what I've been seeing with a lot of regulators and what kind of common folk are looking for broadband deployments. It's a lot. It's going to be hard to hit that. Nice thing, though, is it's not symmetrical. We aren't looking at the 100 by 100, which there's some broadband funding sources that are requiring that, and which really does make it hard for us in the wireless internet service provider, or really any non-fiber service delivery system, to achieve symmetrical services. Just that's a lot of airtime or a lot of wire time, medium time, I guess we might call it. And that's just really going to be difficult for non-fiber services to hit and heck, even GPON isn't going to be symmetrical in what it's delivering. Now, admittedly, it's really easy to hit 100 by 20 or 100 by 100, but unless you have a symmetrical medium that's designed for that, which would be active Ethernet, these kind of symmetrical speeds that we keep seeing, and the article, actually, I'm just now taking a look at it a little bit more. They're saying they have a national goal of 1 gigabits by 500 megabits in the future. Once again, and it's nothing official. They're just making noise, but something to kind of keep in mind and pay attention to, especially as we're building new networks and moving forward in the world. Even if you aren't in the United States, if you're trying to get government funding, you're going to want to be designing for tomorrow's networks and not answering today's problems, which is really frustrating to me. Like, we're trying to solve tomorrow's problems when we don't even know what tomorrow's problems are in some regards. Now, admittedly, like, I appreciate my government, my taxpayer dollars going to, oh, let's build something really, really awesome. But yeah, this is going to be, another one of those, they don't understand, what we're trying to do. And honestly, like 100 by 20, that's a lot. Heck, even in moderately town areas, there's lots of areas where you're just not going to get that. And if that's like the minimum definition for broadband, that's going to be really hard to not get overbuilt with federal funding, especially when you already have really happy customers. So that's frustrating. Well, that's life. Let's see. We do have a new Router OS version, v7.4 RC2 hitting the wire. That came out right after we did our podcast last week or 2 weeks ago. Nothing too terribly crazy new happening there. It's just another release candidate, but we're coming up pretty quick to 7.4, probably hitting general release stable, and that's going to be pretty, that we're now have a couple different stable 7.x versions with RadOS, and I'm starting to see lots and lots more guys on the forums and guys I'm working with that are running RadOS v7 in their networks, production networks. And even IP architects that were talking, they're seeing people pushing out v7 pretty frequently. So if you haven't been experimenting with it, I would definitely recommend spending some time taking a look at it for at least test bench stuff or at your home. I've been running RadOS v7 for almost a year now, and I'm on my home network, and it's pretty darn good. I've not run into significant issues in months for just home networking and lab stuff. There's a few things, TP. I've had a little bug with that, connecting back to older RadOS versions, but I'm not certain if that was the older versions config or just a bug in old version of RadOS. It could also just be was something in that particular. I haven't revisited it since 7.1 something. So by and large, we've got a pretty usable piece of software for a lot of situations. I was actually just working with a company that just had a bunch of phones and they didn't have a router available, that burned out, and were moving between offices or something like that. And all they had was a CRS610. So the PoE switch from Mikrotik that is just a 24 port, I believe. I don't actually know I don't think it was PoE, but 24 copper ports to SFP plus ports, and they needed a router, so bumped it up to v7.31 and turned on hardware offloading, and it worked just fine. Definitely, if you're going to be doing the hardware offloading and testing that, follow the documentation very carefully. There's a special note that if you're changing anything about the layer 2 switching or layer 3 config, either adding or removing hardware offloaded ports, or adding or removing ports to and from the bridge, or adding in new VLANs or whatever, turn off layer 3 hardware offloading, make your changes, and then turn it back on to make certain that the changes stay synchronized. I know that there was a couple times when I was messing with it that I got in a hurry, didn't turn off layer 3 hardware offloading, and then weird stuff started happening. So I'd recommend just following those instructions. It's pretty good and very straightforward, and stuff's just seemed to work pretty well. So take a look at it. It's really, really cool, and you can start getting line rate hard routing, which is effectively unheard of in a lot of situations. NAT for a small office or a home, you can do that with hardware offloaded. And yeah, sure, you're only limited to like 8,000 active connections before they get bumped back over to the CPU. But for a home user, that's shucks. I mean, let's see really quick. New Windows 10 Task Manager, I think it will show you, or Resource Monitor. See how many active connections I have right here. We've got several pages on this one deal here. So admittedly, I'm running Chrome or running Zoom and such. 150 looks like. And I've got Zoom, I've got Discord stuff running, I've got Steam probably doing updates in the background, a bunch of tabs in Chrome and Firefox. So I'm definitely a little bit more active than your average user is going to be in a single. So, but that's one individual connection. So one individual computer. That's not bad. If you can, 8,000, that's going to give you lots of devices behind that you can interact with and control and have hardware offloaded, which means low latency. Let's see here. I'm going into my connection tracking table in my router right now, and I have 45 items. So Windows seems to think I have way more than Mikrotik does, but Mikrotik, if it says there's 45 items right now that it has to keep track of, everything else that doesn't matter. So you can have a lot of users behind that. Now, admittedly, are you going to be able to use one of these CRS610 series devices as like a pop router? As if you're not doing much, you can have some firewalling, and then you can hardware offload with fast track connection. Side note, quick note. You have to do that configuration through the CLI. If you're trying to do firewall, fast track, hardware offloading like Mikrotik talks about in the documentation, there is no option in the GUI to hardware offload a routed connection. You have to do that through the CLI. So just as a heads up, keep in mind but once it's fast tracked, you're able to firewall it. You can do anything like that. You can NAT it, and then once that happens, that's being done by the ASIC and I believe the Marvell chip, which that means really, really awesome experiences there. The guy I was working with, he's just doing a bunch of phones, like 20 user phone system behind this, and that was it. Like not running anything else. I'm like, we can do this super easy. So that's a pretty cool thing to be offering that you can do. So keep that in mind. Now, you aren't going to be bandwidth limiting. You can't do anything like that. But who needs the bandwidth limit when you have line rate? So keep that in mind. Cool stuff happening. We're still getting new Mikrotik releases in V7. Hopefully we're going to see Cake coming back. I definitely was a little bit sad about that. I was playing around with a config and just trying to update my blog posts about Cake and FQ Codal. And so very, very heartbreaking that we don't have that available anymore. But FQ Codals does still seem to be working really good, and definitely worth the time to spend taking a look at that if you're running something that has the processing power for that. Let's see here. Moving on. I think I talked about this last 2 weeks ago with Zach, but there is a guy who is running Unifi on Mikrotik Docker. He has a video on YouTube about setting that up. That's the Network Berg. Really cool guy. Nice to have him putting out videos and instructional stuff. Really cool to see more people contributing to the general knowledge base, help people understanding, and just know it's the kind of the classic WISP mentality, I feel like. So he's got that. It's really cool. If you can throw your controller for that, I think we definitely talked about it, and that's a really cool selling point. Like, you can start throwing this stuff on there. So keep it in mind. Take a look at that. If you're looking at hosting stuff and putting everything all into a single or a couple boxes, trying to distribute your equipment out into the network, your services out onto the network, that's a really cool option. So definitely worth the time to kind of get an idea of what that looks like. Let's see. We'll be talking here in a little while. I'm scheduling with Dennis Burgess, as I said earlier, filing requirements with the FCC and how that's going to look. They did come out with a clarification to the rules. The issue that a lot of people ran into is the FCC is requiring a certified engineer or a competent person's to sign off on a submission. I may be using the wrong terminology or wordage there. I don't have to fill out that paperwork, so I have not been paying very, very close attention to it. But I would recommend anybody in the United States who is operating a network, you really do want to take a look at this because they are threatening to be quite nasty. We don't know if the FCC is going to actually be using the teeth that they are threatening, or if it's just going to be some more growls, but definitely worth it to take a look. And for your submissions, which have to be way more detailed now, you have to have somebody who signs off on that. And they did sort of clarify exactly what that means. A professionally trained engineer has a shorter time period. I believe it's 5 years of industry experience, and is able to do that, or with some technical training and 10 years of experience, you can sign off yourself or be a sign off on that. So it's not great. That's going to make it really, really hard for new guys to get started, and disincentivize new guys from reporting, which I feel that's really, really hard and kind of going to be rough for a lot of little guys. Because if you've only been doing this for a couple of years and now you have to pay a consultant to sign off on your paperwork, and by the way, this consultant is probably going to need to come and take a look at what you're doing and how you're filling out your paperwork. Like, that's not going to be cheap, especially if they're putting their name on the line for your submission. Oh man, that's really rough. There's a lot of people who've been getting kind of up in arms about this. WISPA has had a couple seminars, and I've been seeing posts from the chair of WISPA discussing this, and John O'Keefe, I believe is his name, or Keefe, terrible with names. He's been talking about it a lot. So if you're in the United States, you're running an internet service provider, definitely take a look at this. It's going to be a lot of effort. And I've been hearing from some people that around the world, some governments may be looking at copying this that weren't nearly as, we're kind of following the old FCC 477 style. I'm trying to remember, wanted to say somewhere in South America. I'm blanking, terrible with names. So these might be coming to you even still. So, which, gosh, that's going to be rough. So keep an eye on this, guys. This is going to be biting you in the bum sooner or later. And maybe talk to your congressman and or other federal level representatives and say, hey, what are you doing for me to make it so that I can deliver to my customers and fill out these forms and be beneficial to these people. Be attentive to that, interact, don't be silent, don't not submit, don't just protest by being by hiding away in the background. That's going to just make things worse, I suspect. Speaking of which, there was a really fun conversation happening on Facebook about broadband delivery and how people experience or expect that to what people are assuming. The original post was discussing saying, hey, stop selling bandwidth plans, 500 megabits per second, 25 megs per second, or whatever, and whatever your upload speeds, and just deliver good service was the core of the argument. And one of the side, why is this, why am I holding this position, is the guy was saying, well, who knows what, who of us around here knows how many amperage electrical service that you have to your house, or water service. Nobody knows how many gallons per minute that they can get. They just expect to turn on the tap and the water to work, and it does, and people are happy with that. To which I kind of took a little bit of offense to. I'm a naturally argumentative, so I definitely jumped on there. I'm like, well, sure, nobody knows how water, how much water they can get per minute, but it's pretty easy to associate the shower coming on and your water pressure at your faucet going down, or hey, I just turned on the dishwasher and it's doing its thing, and oh, by the way, that means that the hot water is gonna not be all that available upstairs in the shower. So might not want to do that when the wife is going for her shower. I wouldn't. And so that physical medium association is a lot easier to do and interact with, whereas internet, it's hard to see bandwidth not coming through, or to see where bandwidth is going, or how much bandwidth you're even using at the moment. And it's really, really difficult to see in your house that nothing is using bandwidth, yet you still have no connectivity, or that you're somehow kinking the hose for your bandwidth, and that's why you have very little water coming out the end, even though you're like, you pay for gigabit service, and your device is on the other side of your property and has a really poor Wi-Fi connection and a really high noise environment. So that physical medium just is missing, and it's hard for people to get that tangible feel. Whereas with water, it's really straightforward. I, as a 8-year-old, had it down. I knew kinking hoses. I knew don't turn on the water in the shower when we're trying to wash dishes or whatever. And the same goes for electricity. Like there's a very physical, like if the power's not on, it's notable. If something is going, if power is going to something else, it's making noise. There's a very visceral thing. Like I've shorted out an outlet in my house, and it was a very noticeable situation. And dimmed the lights and such before the circuit breaker popped. And so that's also very, tangible. Now, admittedly, there's some level of intangibility even with electricity and with water. And so, it's not, it definitely isn't perfect in that regard. And then the other side of that is, water, electricity. Electricity, it may be a little bit closer to internet just because you are going to be delivering connectivity from sources that you don't have control over. But water is straightforward. You pump it up into a water tower, deliver it to the customers. Like you have a single source, the water tower, that you have to pay attention to. And you don't really care about where the water, the water's coming from a single source, a lake, a river, in an aquifer somewhere, and you have control over a lot of that. And so the delivery of that service is very much under your control. Whereas internet, I'm connecting somebody to dozens or hundreds or thousands of different endpoints. And it's not just a one-way street, it's a two-way connection that I'm delivering. So I'm enabling not just stuff to flow into this house, but I also need to take stuff from that house and send it out to the four corners of the internet. And so that analogy really, I feel, starts to fall apart, and you need to be really careful with that in that regard. And so if you have some of your own thoughts about how you've explained internet service as, a utility, or what is a closer analogy? I mean, immediately, electricity. Yeah, we're going from the four corners of the United States for most of the United States, or most of the world is going to have power delivery from all over the place. But I can't think of anything that's a two-way street, and besides telephone, and telephone's mostly internet nowadays. And definitely not anything where you're talking to a single household is going to be talking to dozens or hundreds or thousands of different connecting endpoints, possibly at the same time, and definitely not over the course of a day or a week. Just not something that seems like a great a great analogy. So, and that kind of also leads us towards the municipality or utilitization of broadband, which personally I don't feel I'm very much for. I would like to see internet stay kind of Wild West. I think that there's a little bit of magic there that in innovation and change and freedom that you don't get once you become a utility. Once everyone is expecting you to be a utility, there's things that tie you down in a lot of ways. Not saying that it's a bad thing, and to be honest, in a lot of ways, internet really is. As 2020 and 2021 showed us, everyone relies on it, and it is a necessity for so many people in their daily lives. So not having it is not something that a lot of us can get by with. So, effectively, in a lot of regards, we're looking, it is a utility in a lot of ways. It's not defined as such. I don't look forward to the day when it will be But it's probably a reality that we need to be accepting and to be prepping for. And so what kind of utility, how are we analogous to, and where is that? And that's a conversation I feel like we should really have and work on, and try and have some thoughts and explanations ready for, because when this happens, we need to be able to have an answer, and the better unified answer that we have, and one that we are comfortable both presenting and living up to, and is something that our customers find acceptable too, is going to make for a better user experience overall, whether or not when we stop becoming the Wild West. So we should be, spend some time thinking about that. Maybe shoot me an email with your thoughts if you think that we can, that there is a better analogy, or that there is what that's going to look like in your opinion. Let's have a little bit of conversation. If I'll bring that up next time we come up. Let's see what else is new happening. We don't have any new Patreons, but we did have some really cool discussions. Talking about 80 kilometer Bidi optics, diagnostics. Just kind of what were we, how do you do some figuring out and what this is going to be? That was coming from, I believe it was, Joe Novak. So he's got Bidi SFP, 80 kilometer from Fiberstore. Estimated length is between 55-60. He didn't have an OTR for that at the time when he was setting it up. Just got it connected. On the TX, it's at 1330, and RX far side is neg 13.124 dBm. On the remote side, the TX is 1270, and coming in, light is going to be neg 23, which is a lot of loss, and you're riding really probably close to what the Fiberstore SFPs, from what I recall, somewhere in the 20s, and it wasn't very high 20s. I know there were some that were like neg 27 or something that they work it down to, but I want to say mid to low 20s is where a lot of specification sheets were cutting off, and we're saying was the lower limit for having a reliable connection. And so if you're already there, that's not a lot of, you're in a situation where you're going to start having issues with connectivity. And Joe was saying he's had SDS errors on this. He didn't previously, but let's see, a lot of stuff going across that, and so pretty rough. And basically what everyone was saying is just swap out the optics. Like Fiberstore, you're looking at, for 80 kilometer, what, $50-$60 at worst. Just swap, maybe 120. Just swap them out and see what you're doing. And the nice thing is with Bidi is like, it's pretty quick. You only have one connector to swap out. Then if that doesn't change anything, clean them, swap your patch cables, and you're gonna probably solve some issues. It's unlikely with 1270 nanometer and 1330, with them being so close in frequency, that the cable or imperfections in the cable are going to affect the two light levels significantly. You're going to see a couple dB difference, 1 or 2. And like with other Bidi optics, 20 kilometer, most of those are going to be like 1310 and 1550. In those situations, you're going to see like 5, 6, 8 dB difference between each side's receive level. just with how significantly different 1550 interacts with fiber than 1310, and how much it degrades over a distance, and how much it gets reflected and bounces around and such. So you're going to see a significant difference on optics that have very different light signals, 1550 and 1310, but 1270 and 1330 are so close. You're going to see you should expect to see pretty darn close within a couple dB a lot of the time, even on that distance. So that you're looking at a 10 dB difference, that's just too much. And you should be doing some diagnostics, and it's pretty unlikely that it's going to be the cabling. So just keep an eye out for that when you're setting stuff up. Make note, especially if you're using bidirectional, which I guess I should have clarified that. Bidirectional means you're only using one fiber cable, so a single piece of strand of fiber going between each location, which means that you can't use the same frequency for both transmitting and receiving. And that's how you make a bidirectional optic, is you use one frequency like 1310 for transmitting on one side, and you use 1270 as the transmit side for the other, and you will have a unique optic. So that optic one will be a TX 1310, the other will be a TX 1270, and they'll each have a respective, the TX 1270 will have an RX sensor for 1330 or 1310, whatever, and the 1330 transmit will have a 1270 nanometer receiver, and be looking for that. So you're going to have a unique optic on each side, which makes it a little bit more complicated for inventories side wise. You got to keep track of which side is which and what frequencies they're using. But the nice thing is you're saving yourself. You only have to use a single fiber, and so that's how basically my old job, how we did almost all of our fiber optic connections, unless we were doing wavelength stuff, or DWDM or CWDM. Then it gets messy, and it's just easier to just use two fibers. But they do make BiDi DWDM stuff, so FYI, if you want to be really crazy. But if you're doing active Ethernet to the home, or you just want to optimize the use of your existing fiber infrastructure, BiDi optics are really nice. There's no need to roll the cable. Like, you can't hook the fibers in backwards because there's only one. But you do need to be attentive to which SFPs are on each side, and keeping spares around for each type. So you've effectively doubled. So pluses and minuses, but paying attention to that, you can get yourself out of a lot of trouble or into. Another fiber conversation we had was guys looking at doing 272 apartments in 10 different buildings, which really reminded me of our active Ethernet versus GPON conversation. We had a lot of fun with that. I would participate in that cast, and I think I would love to have a second conversation about that, especially after this, because the guy, he didn't want to use Ubiquiti U-Fiber, but wanted kind of a cost-effective solution. But the really key term was active Ethernet is not an option because they want to be able to market fiber to the unit. And so that was the first line. It's like, oh no, whoa, you can do fiber to the apartment with active Ethernet. So clarifying that, and then moving around and like, what different options do you have in that? How can we discuss? And a lot of the opinion was, especially if you're not looking at doing a low end, cheaper GPON system like Ubiquiti U-Fiber, you're going to run into the issue of your scale's not quite large enough at 272. Like, that's kind of a hard business proposition to make, because your initial cost investment with GPON very, very frequently, unless you get really expensive active Ethernet switches, it's going to be higher. And unless you have a really, really massive deployment as well, your power consumption and other costs in those regards are going to be a lot higher as well. So kind of going around talking, you're looking at 20, 30, 41 units per building. What that's going to look like and how, and really, I think it was actually an excellent situation where you're looking at active Ethernet would be really beneficial, because not only do you just, you run a couple strands of fiber in between each building, maybe build a ring if you can, and then you hook 10 gig ports in between each building, and then you say you have a 48 port switch, 48 SFP switch. Well, now you have one piece of equipment at each building that can hook up all the customers at a gig, or even faster for not much more money, and you're done. You don't have to do anything all that special, and you're going to have plenty of bandwidth. With 10 gigs, 41 customers, you're never going to be able to use all of that in an effective way where they're going to be able to come back and complain to you about not having their speed, unless there's something absolutely insane. So we spent a lot of time talking about that, going back and forth. For those of you who are Patreon members, feel free to jump in, take a look at that. That's over in the fiber channel. We did discuss a few other options. We have out there, there's the T-bit, which if you're just it's a gigabit or XG-PON, which, that's definitely going to be a lower cost alternative. You just need a 10 gig port on a switch with an SFP plus port, plug it in, and you're good to go. And I guess I'm oversimplifying it a little bit. They do, at least last time I took a look at them, they did have some requirements for having some amount of airflow on that switch. Now you can solve that with a fan in the room, but just as a FYI, they do have some requirements there. And the other negative, I just pulled up the price. You're looking at $1,400 on Baltic Networks' site for the Tibit OLT device. That's pretty expensive, and especially if you're trying to, if you're trying to do like all 272, I don't know if you can split that high for GPON, XG-GPON, and I don't think you'd want 272 different apartments. So you're looking at 2, 3, 4 of those. 4 probably wouldn't be unreasonable. If you're wanting to keep like the classic 32-ish split for customers, is what we try to do for our GPON system. And you're looking at almost 10, which that's 10 grand worth of equipment, and that's not even counting your switch, not counting transport and the ONTs, ONTs for inside of each of the apartments. You're getting kind of expensive right there. Whereas my point was, if you throw in, fiber store switch, they've got a couple of them. I'm not going to read off. Oh my goodness, that's the worst. They have almost as bad as Mikrotik S5800-48F4SR, 48 port gigabit Ethernet LT layer 3 switch, 48 1 gig SFP ports with 4x 10 gig SFP ports. Well, that's $1,500, $1,600, which right there, that's the switch. You can hook up to 48, so you can do a lot. And then they have 24 and DC versions of this switch. So I think that's a pretty appealing version for this. Not only is all your equipment just going to be inside of each building, and you have a lot simpler user interface there with just running active Ethernet. You can just do VLANs to that to isolate people. Heck, you can just do port isolation. You don't have to do a particularly complicated system for 200 odd customers, almost 3. You could get away with a lot. Or if you're wanting to go just straight all Mikrotik, your ONTs, you can use the GPIN 21s. I've built a fiber network that used GPIN 21s for our optical network terminals that were external to the customer's house. So we ran copper Ethernet inside the customer's house, PoE power out to GPIN 21, and that acted as our ONT, which converts from fiber to copper. If you want to stick in the Mikrotik realm, you've got the CRS610s, which give you up to 24 SFP plus ports with SFP, and you can get QSFP ports on that. Heck, you can stack those guys nowadays and do all sorts of really cool stuff with that. And then, if your guys are already Mikrotik trained, that's a pretty easy sell in my book. And rolling from there. We also had a little bit of discussion in there about, how do you keep a customer from hooking in their own router, which that's depends on why you're looking at wanting to do that. The idea being like, hey, I want to manage this. If you plug in your own router, this is going to cause problems for you probably because I'm no longer managing your wireless, which means that your wireless isn't coordinated with all your neighbors to channel bounced away or balanced so that you don't have you've minimized interference from your neighbors. You're probably going to just be running really wide channels, so you're going to be stepping on your neighbors, so you're going to increase issues for people. And a couple suggestions were blacklist MAC IDs from manufacturers that make routers alone, like so Netgear or whatever. And I don't think that was really, that's a great plan, just because you're going to be looking at, okay, well, you have Netgear, Cisco, which is Linksys, TP-Link, and I'm just naming the top big guys. Belkin's out there. You've got all these other smaller manufacturers, and now you have to keep track of who has which MAC IDs. You're really quickly going to start looking a lot like those lists of countries that people would black hole in their firewalls, and you're just that's gonna have some issues. So Greg actually jumped in and he said if you set the TTL on the connections to 1, as it's leaving your router going towards the customer, that means that if they put in another router in between your equipment and their devices, then let's see, Mango rule that affects, will adjust. Yeah, I don't think you do set it to 2, I believe, actually. And in that case, then you could control that, but all right, well, now you're just playing a cat and mouse game. And it's a good way to get yourself into a rat race. Now, admittedly, most customers aren't going to mess around with that, and a guy who is going to notice that you're setting his TTL to prevent him from plugging in his own router, and he is able to get around you, is probably going to be reasonable, or at least isn't going to be somebody who you really care to get into a pissing match with. So, maybe you're just never, and he's probably not going to call you for a problem that's not your problem. So maybe that's just something that, just set the TTL, maybe you aren't going to be in much of a problem. You're not going to have many troubles. Let's see here. Mikrotik. Oh yeah, they announced a couple new routers or switches coming out. That was actually and they've got the new girl doing one of the announcements, which is nice. I like it when we have the fairer sex chatting to us. She does I'm gonna look up her name because she is a great job, and I'm very appreciative of Mikrotik spreading around and being like, hey, we have lots of really intelligent employees who are more than capable of presenting our really cool new products. So really exciting to see more 100 gig options. Let's see, what's their latest videos? Yeah. They've got the new LTE 6 kit. Not been much on the LTE stuff. I'm just not as huge of a fan of paying attention to what that looks like and dealing with that. And so, I don't know. That's just not me. That's life. Sorry. Nobody cares about listening to advertisements. It doesn't say. Oh shoot, I feel bad now. Well, she did an excellent job. Go ahead and check it out. It's a CRS510 16 port SFP 25 XFP. Well, it's the XS 16 port 25 gig SFP 28s and -2XQ, which is 200 gig ports. So we're looking at enough connectivity to really pass some bits now, which is pretty freaking sweet. And then we've got let's see. Oh yeah, shoot, the RB5009 UPR plus S plus IN. They have power input and output on all 8S Ethernet ports, and I believe they've got 10 gigabit SFP plus, 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, PoE in and PoE out. So there is some qualifications to that. Definitely take a be attentive. You don't get to do like mixed voltages. Whatever you're supplying is what it's able to whatever you're supplying to it is what it's able to supply out. And they definitely make note of it's not going to be a hot idea to supply PoE to it and expect to be able to power very much off of running PoE from it. They don't explicitly say that that's not something that can be done, but I wouldn't be very attentive and when you're doing that, because they do say like, hey, there's going to be some shortcomings here. So attentive to that, but that's super cool. You can now run effectively the entirety of your micro pop or even a reasonably sized pop off of your router. You supply power to one device. You don't have to have a PoE injector or a PoE switch. You can just drop in a 5009, power it, and you're done. Which really, that's a huge selling point. Like I had, goodness, a quarter of my previous network, I could have just had a 5009 in there, and I would have gotten rid of an atomic switch, a 1009, PoE. We had a few TP-Link and PoE Texas power injectors, and then oh shoot, what was the power injector that they had the really hilarious website advertisements? Digital loggers, those guys. They had really hilarious videos. Their website's still up. Go ahead and check that out. If I think about it, I will try and link their website if it's still up and for you guys. Not a huge fan of their products. I ripped that out for Nettonics's pretty early on in my career. But they did have really hilarious stuff, and it did work well. Like, we was very reliable and didn't have many issues with ports getting fried or stuff like that. So for what it was worth, they did work. We just couldn't get gigabit Ethernet ports from them for years. And so I just got tired of it and wanted to go from fast Ethernet to gig. So we went Netonics. This would effectively replace all of that. And now if it's fiber fed, you have an SFP plus port, boom, done. If you have something like a multiple gigabit backhaul, you have copper Ethernet, 2.5 gig copper Ethernet to feed in, or the 10, like that's pretty cool. So Mikrotik's definitely, Mike Hammond, I was really actually excited to have Mike on, because he is one of the few guys I know who routes entirely to his customer. He doesn't have any switches in his network, which I think is crazy, but he does it, and he's profitable. So I'm not going to argue the point with him too terribly much there. So guys like that, you don't even have to be that crazy, but you can have a lot of benefits in that regard. So really exciting news coming out from Mikrotik there. That's gonna be opening up a lot of really nice features for guys to be working with stuff. We do have the new newsletter 106 as well. Should have mentioned that a little bit earlier. That came out just a couple of days ago. There wasn't much in there that I was surprised about. So it is what it is. But you'd get the I guess maybe I'm just like super hooked in. The 1009 or 5009. The CRS 610. So that gives you 8 gigabit PoE out ports and 2x 10 gig gigabit SFP ports. So that's going to effectively kill the 210, which I am more than happy about. I'm sad because I just bought 2 of those switches like 3 weeks ago, and 3-4 weeks ago. So definitely I'm a little bit sad about that. But whatever. That's the end of this 210s, which is nice. I'm not a huge fan of having to go into the switch menu to do VLAN config. I figured it out. I've muddled through it, but not a huge fan of it. And I'm really glad that we have new options and everything can be done in the bridge menu. It just makes my life easier. I don't have to think, which is nice. And I don't have to go to different menus to handle different things. And the more you can minimize that, the better. I did forget to mention the new CRS510, that 16 port 25 gig switch, 25 gigabit ports, does have 2 fully removable redundant power supplies, hot swappable, and 4 hot swappable fans, which is new and unique in the Mikrotik line. Like, we're starting to see this, and that's making a lot closer to really carrier grade gear. Like, I don't have to go down to maintain this equipment, which that's a pretty nice feature in my opinion. We're getting really close to what you're seeing in what we see in other products and in the higher end industry. So I'm really excited about what's coming up with Mikrotik and where they're going, and that we're getting to kind of walk along with them and see this happening. Like, this is really kind of cool. You got a whole slew of new direct attach cables and QSFP modules. for various price points, the new Chateau and the LT. They're both US versions of what I guess already existed. I'll wait for somebody else who's more in tune with the LTE gear to comment about that. So cool new stuff coming out from Mikrotik. Really nice to see stuff happening, and that that backlog that kind of happened in 2020 and 2021, where we didn't really see a lot of stuff coming out. We were really expecting, and it felt like they were really dragging V7 through to us, and we're starting to see this rubber hit the road, and I think they're really taking off, and this is going to be really exciting. So hot new stuff. So let's see, trying to run through anything else that I was noticing. Right about the hour mark, so I think we can stick a fork in it. Let's see, if you're trying to reach me out here on the interwebs, that'll be Tommy@lostcreek.tech. That's my email. You can always find me on the Little Brothers Slack group. I'm there all the time, whether or not I'm awake, it seems. Let's see, we have I'm Tommy5 on MOSA forums, MOSA community forums. I've been really bad about being on that. Been trying to get better about jumping on that and being helping guys out there. So let's try to be on that. LostCreek.tech is my website. Probably not worth going there. A bunch of my articles for router SB7 stuff are out of date and embarrassingly so. So don't go there. The website's broken anyways. I'm not a WordPress master in any regard. Let's see. If you want to support the Brothers WISP, putting out these podcasts ain't free. Gotta pay for stuff and such. So if you'd like to support this and the various stuff that we offer and try and do in the community, go ahead and jump over to patreon.com/the Brothers WISP. Throw some bones if you get at the $8 or more tier. I'll send you a link into our Slack group where you can participate in our conversations and contribute yourself, or get some of your own questions answered. We get new guys in and they come out asking questions, and a lot of guys really do love to just help out. So that's kind of what I would like for the Brothers WISP to be, is we're not a big group. We're not here to put each other down. We're trying to help our communities. We're trying to, we're enthusiasts, most of us, that really do love what we're doing and want to do our job well. And Brothers WISP, that's what I would like for us to be. So hop in there sometimes and help us out and contribute or get your questions answered. Let's see. Oh, there's also, Mike mentioned this to me. There is if you're in Midwest United States, there is a gathering for internet service providers, and let me see if I will throw a link in the Slack group or in the show notes and on YouTube and on the cast. I believe there's a Facebook invite out there. Maybe if there's something else, I'll show you a link to that. Take a look at that if you're available. I believe that's in 2 weeks. Yes, that's just a little bit less than 2 weeks out. Maybe catch you there. It'd be cool to see people. get out, hang out, see some of the summer and kind of interact with people. So if you're going to be there, I will be trying to go. I think I have that booked out in my schedule already. So catch you all later, I guess. Have a wonderful day and peace.
It's the Brothers Wisp. Let's take a ride through space on this mothership. Wireless networking. We talk about equipment and methodology, so sit back and start learning. Lighten up the tower so people can start searching. Shooting up the web in neighborhoods, net surfing. We got horrible jokes, we're loud and annoying, but we're informative facts, we're not disappointing. Just give us a listen, cause fun is the mission. I'm telling you, you don't know what you are missing. Ideas and some good comedy given. If you missed the show already, don't worry, you're forgiven.